Felicia Foster, and welcome to Windows Around the World. Missouri Southern State University strives to allow students to travel all across the globe to study. Today's show, we would like to introduce Dr. Jason Willand and Danielle Plutino with the Biology and Environmental Health Department, who recently visited and studied in Belize. Hello.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for joining me today. So, Belize, as I understand, you don't just get to go and start studying. This takes weeks and weeks of lectures and homework before you even get to go. Is that correct?
Yes, so how this class is kind of structured is that at the beginning of the semester, you just have like the preliminary class, and that's where they kind of set everything into place, like, okay, these are the different activities that we're going to be doing, and you meet for class like once a week, and during that time you usually have lectures, and then they'll also kind of give assignments that pertain to what we're going to be studying while in Belize. And then something that I thought was really fun to do was you got to pick a particular aspect of Belize and then do like a presentation on that. So for me that was really awesome, because then by the time I got to Belize, I already kind of knew quite a bit about what it was that I chose, and that was like the Belizean culture. So I was able to kind of interact a bit more like easier with the people, just because of like all the information I had acquired from my presentation.
That is amazing. Sounds very intensive. So, after these 16 weeks of lectures, how did you get to go to Belize?
So this is basically kind of this was my first trip. Dr. Wells and Dr. Schlink previously were the professors kind of in charge, and so when Dr. Schlink retired, I kind of filled in, and so I'm going to basically kind of be the lead. So I had to learn probably just as much as the students, kind of to prepare for both the rainforest and the coral reefs.
Well, as I understand, we have Belize in Central America, and we have the Caribbean shoreline, and then we have a dense rainforest to the west, and you got to study both.
Mm-hmm. So we spent about half the trip in southern Belize at a place called Blue Creek Field Station, and then we traveled kind of back north and to the east to go out to the coral reefs on Southwater Key.
Well, I see that you have some pictures available that you can show us as well.
Absolutely.
Of the reefs and the rainforest. We'll bring those up here in a minute. Okay, so what is going on here? Is this the Mayan, the villages?
Let Danielle handle these couple pictures.
Yes, okay, so one of the things that we got to do while in Blue Creek, which was the tropical rainforest, was one of the locals was gracious enough to let us visit her home. And so when we went into her home, she showed us how to make tortillas from scratch and also hot cocoa. And so what we have here is the tortillas that we were able to make, and making them into a perfect circle is a lot more difficult than you would assume. We got some interesting shapes going on there, but it was just really neat kind of seeing like how they like make it literally from scratch, because we just get ours from like a package at the store, but like seeing here, no, you have to like grind up the corn and make what's called like a masa, and then you have to like, you know, spread that out and make like a dough out of it and then make it into little circles. It's a very labor intensive process, and like even for the lady whose house this was, she had to do that like 3 times a day for her large family, which she had like 7 children, so you can imagine she'd have to make quite a few tortillas. But yeah, that's what we got to do while there.
And this is another part of the village.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so this is also Blue Creek, and this is just one of the houses, an exterior view of one of the houses.
So this is a what we call a slash and burn plot, and so the traditional farming method in the tropics, such as in Belize here, is to where you cut down the vegetation and you burn it to put the nutrients in the soil for maybe a year or 2. So basically they just put little divots in the ground, and everything that they're going to plant goes in these divots, so everything basically just kind of grows together. So when they're growing corn and anything else, it's all just kind of scattered, and so they'll just kind of use these plots, maybe an acre at best in size, and then they just kind of will move to the next adjacent area and just kind of do the same thing and just kind of rotate around probably for about 20 years until that recovers.
This is a sweet one.
Yes,
very sweet.
And I think this was also at the home, because what had happened is that the lady whose house that was, she had her little children there, but then like slowly but surely more and more children started like coming because there were visitors, so they wanted to visit with us.
So not only did you get a chance to study in biology, you got to interact with the people of Belize. That's really amazing.
And for me, I think that was probably one of the more fun parts of the trip, was being able to actually see what it was like just by like talking more with the locals.
And some more of the village here.
And this was the field station where we stayed there in the rainforest. Yep.
Oh, that is beautiful.
All right, and then, yeah, this was one of my favorite parts of the trip. So what we got to do, because it's called Blue Creek, so there's a creek running through it, but what you can do is kind of follow the creek up to this cave. And the creek actually originates from that waterfall that you see back there, and so that is what makes Blue Creek Blue Creek. So what we got to do is actually swim through the cave and go all the way back to the waterfall. It was like a mile and a half there and a mile and a half back. So yeah, it was a bit intensive, but it was so much fun.
So preparing for this trip, did you have to tell your students that you have to be fit? You have to be ready to walk, to swim?
I think we said it just about every week. Throughout the course, and it was in the flyers when we announced the class, because that was the big thing, was the rigor of hiking and then doing a lot of swimming when we were out in the water.
Yes. Okay, what's going on here?
I'm probably going to botch the name of this, but this is one of several Mayan ruins, and so this is actually not too far from the field station where we stayed as we were heading north, but this is a Lubatan Mayan ruin, and this one's not quite as restored as others that you see, so you'll notice it kind of looks like it's crumbling in the back, and that's really is what's left of that particular site.
Oh, that's devastating, but very neat that you got to see this. And this is some more of the ruins.
And they do kind of leave the nice kind of park-like feel kind of open, because there was a spot in here, I don't know if I included a picture of it, but there's like a ball field where they would play. It was a game, I guess, kind of similar to maybe a cross between soccer and football, where you had a rubber ball and you have to try to get it pass through your opponents or whatever to make a goal. This is basically just kind of a view of some of the mountains that surrounded us. This was kind of a walk we did as part of that slash and burn plot that we saw a picture of earlier.
Now this is your group, and
this is part of our group.
This is only a part of the group. How many do you went on this great opportunity?
Well, we had 18 students, 2 faculty.
Wow.
So that was just so this is a better picture, I think, of the whole group of students.
Yes, that's the whole group.
And this isn't just biology students, correct? This is every major?
This is open to any major. We had 7 different majors represented, such as we had criminal justice, environmental health, biology. I'm forgetting just about all the 7 we had. You
just had many different perspectives being able to go on this study with you, and that is really amazing. So how did this study abroad opportunity really advance your educational career?
So I learned just more than merely the names of different fish and plants while down there. Just some of the important takeaways that I kind of got was communication. Because when you're in English, yes, it is the predominant language in Belize, but especially with people having different accents, and for some people they don't really speak English that much. Just for every time that I've been able to kind of go abroad, I have been able to acquire a better way of being able to understand people, and I think that will really help me, especially more inside the professional field I'm heading towards, because then it's okay, just trying to understand different people, and then even as you were kind of saying, just having different perspectives, that was another thing, because then you kind of listen to everybody's going to have a different view on it, and so that was also something that for me was very valuable, because I know that inside the workforce you're going to be dealing with a lot of different people, and so those were just some main takeaways that I got from it.
Now you said that you've been on several study abroad opportunities? Where else have you been?
So not this past May, because I was in Belize, but the May before that I actually went to Italy, the anatomical Italy trip that MSSU, the biology department, had hosted. So those were the two that I went with the school, but I've also been able to go to Jamaica 2 times as well. It was a separate mission trip. So I've kind of been able to get around a little bit.
Wow, that must have been eye-opening experiences.
It was, yes.
And something that you can really do whenever you're younger and you're in college and you have the time to do it and really experience these different cultures and learn from them and apply them later on in life.
Oh, absolutely. And I think even now, like coming back from Belize, there were other things I did kind of learn. And one of those was simplicity, like, especially going to Belize where they had electricity, but it was, kind of limited. Our phones didn't work down there. It just was really awesome being able to, like, having that detox for me, but then seeing the people, how they don't have that much, but they were so happy. Like even the little children, just like, making toys out of whatever they had, be it mud, sticks. They were just so happy with what little they had, and it was kind of like one of those moments where you're like, I kind of, want a little bit of that. And for me, just being able to see that firsthand and seeing how grateful they were for everything that they did have, no matter how small it was, that was another main takeaway I got from them.
That's amazing. That's a wonderful experience. Now, this was your first trip, and so you have all these students that you're trying to make sure they don't get lost, and you're in charge of all of them. How did it go? Was there any rough patches, or was it pretty smooth?
I think for the size of the group, I think it was really smooth. I think the only time that I was, I'll say, really stressed out was, when we would go in the water and we had, even then, we would break up into groups with 6 students, and a faculty member, and we had guides, but it was, like we let the guide be first, students in the middle, and hopefully I'm in the back. And so, I felt like I was just kind of back there just trying to wrangle, make sure I've got a head count on everybody, because there's nothing more stressful than you got 5 and where's number 6, or something like that.
Yes, indeed. Now here's some more pictures. It looks like, are you on a boat?
So that was basically one of the times, basically everybody trying to get themselves ready to snorkel. So, putting on your fins, getting your mask. Then once the guide says, the pool is open, you are free to jump in the water.
And now are you collecting samples there? Are you just doing observations?
This looks like maybe just a simple observation, and that's just that's something we call a sea cucumber, and they were pretty common, in what they call the manatee grass or seagrass beds.
Now, after getting to see the coral reef, how was your feelings about its health? Is ocean pollution causing it to die? Is it still very healthy?
Compared to like what I've seen as far as like pictures from like the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, what we saw looked very healthy. At least, beautiful. Again, from maybe Danielle can add to this, but I didn't see a lot in the way of what looked like very obvious coral bleaching, like what you see with pictures from around the world.
And I would concur with Dr. Willand. I didn't see anything where it was like, oh my goodness, that's very obvious, that's the coral bleaching, as compared to other pictures I've seen, especially of like the Great Barrier Reef, where it's like very obvious. For here, I would say it was a pretty healthy environment, and the guides, they take great measures to stress. One of them kept on telling us, don't hurt my reef, don't touch my reef, kind of like that. And I think just by them stressing that helps whoever it is that they're leading to make sure that, okay, be careful with the reef.
That is very fascinating. I was very curious about how the health of this reef was whenever you went to go study it. Now let's talk a little bit about the rainforest. What type of discoveries did you make there?
Well, I'll let Danielle do this. But for me, I'm a botanist, so I'm plant focused. So I'm sure I drove the students crazy because I would stop every 5 seconds. I'd look at something plant related, nothing else. But and I study a lot of different things. But I was excited about the diversity. That was one of the things that really got me interested in going on a trip. I'm not putting down the barrier, the reef or anything, but I really got to see a lot of the things that I wanted to see and more. And so the diversity, you know, I don't care what it is that you were looking at, if it was the plants, if it was the, you know, invertebrate animals, birds, or whatever it might have been, they were pretty much everywhere.
What did you think of the rainforest?
It was amazing. It was quite unlike anything I'd ever seen before. And yes, I definitely agree with Dr. Willand, just being able to see like the diversity of the different species. That was like, wow, this is so cool. One thing that I was not a fan of is cockroaches. I do not like them here, but down there they're like that big. And they fly, and so for me that was a little terrifying, but it was like, you know, just kind of seeing, you know, kind of different species. For me that was kind of interesting, but whenever I think of the rainforest though, I always think of like the people, because I was able to interact with them quite a bit more, and I love being able to do that. One of my favorite memories was when they would spread out their wares on like their little blankets. They have like little handcrafted things, and I had made a purchase from two little girls, and then as a gift they actually gave me this necklace. It was a gift from them, but for me that it just like meant the world to me, especially when, you know, they knew my name, I knew their names. That was just really, for me, something I really enjoyed from the rainforest.
They sound very welcoming, like you didn't have any issues with the people. They just came right up to you and welcomed you. And I want to ask about the rainforest. Was you able to take any samples, or was it a no-touch, just look?
Pretty much. And really I was in both locations where, you know, you should not be taking anything with you, destroying anything. I mean, it's obvious, like if you're going to pick something up like an animal or whatever to look at it, you put it back and, you know, do as little trampling and damage as you possibly can in again, either spot.
Now, with safety preparations, did you have to go over with your students, what's the poisonous frogs? Watch out for these snakes. Anything like that?
I did a little bit, you know, during the lectures talking about, you know, the venomous snakes, and unfortunately we didn't come across any. We didn't come across any poisonous frogs. I think about as maybe the most dangerous animals I think we saw were probably like the scorpions. If you want to throw tarantulas in there as far as dangerous, we saw them every night. So they're, you know, so they were very common. It's just that if you don't pester them and if you just give them their space, you're fine.
I would say more with the coral reef. That was where you guys were like, okay, make sure you don't touch like the fire coral, because if you touch the fire coral, you will have like a burning sensation and it'll itch, and it's very unpleasant. So I would say it was more of like that, where you guys were like, just please do not touch the fire coral, because we are far away from any like medical facilities. So we just really made sure, like in our guides did the same thing, where they made sure everybody knew, do not touch the fire coral, because it will be very painful.
Now, how did your trip kind of wrap in with your lectures? What was some specific points where we studied this in class and now you get to do it, you get to see it?
I think, you know, the way that the trip was set up, you know, we have activities, kind of specific activities, and, you know, we talked about them kind of broadly to the students, because, you know, you don't know which ones you're going to be able to do based on the weather and conditions and such. But, you know, when we were in the rainforest, we had an activity the first morning, you know, ethnobotany, where a guide split us up into two groups, and they basically just talked about, you know, whatever it was, you know, medicinal qualities of plants, you know, their edibility, you know, if you're in a survival situation, you know, which ones can give you water, so things like that. So that tied in really nicely. The slash and burn tied in very nicely, you know, because I talked about that as well a little bit. So that's kind of some of the things that I knew would tie in. And then, you know, on the coral reef, well, I'll let Danielle kind of jump in here, but, you know, they had to do like a fish quiz, so we had all these things where they had to, you know, identify and learn, you know, because when we're out in there, things move, you know, can move pretty quick, and, you know, you got to get, you know, really develop your kind of your search engine, and like, okay, that's, you know, a grunt, or that's, you know, a wrasse, or whatever it might be. And then we would come back in the evenings, and we would work on our list and say, okay, guys, what do we see today? You know, and so everybody would pitch in, because we added so many new things this trip that were not seen on previous trips.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of helpful, especially with, like, the fish quiz, because there are so many different fish out there, and so sometimes it felt overwhelming because I was like, oh my goodness, I can't, remember all of them, but just they made sure that we knew the basic ones, and I felt that that did help me to enjoy it more when I was out there, because then it's like, oh yeah, that's a sergeant major. Yeah, we studied that one in class. So that way, like, when I was actually out there, all of a sudden it was like I knew the more, like, popular ones, but then I was able to kind of narrow in and discover a couple of ones that we didn't go over inside class, and for me that was kind of exciting because it was like, oh, a new fish, I haven't seen this one before. Then we go inside the books at nighttime, look it up, and then it's like, oh, okay, this is this type of fish.
It's very interesting. Yet you have to go back to the books. There's no cell phone reception there.
Nope.
No Googling.
Nope. There's no Googling when you're on the reef or anywhere else out there, really. So yeah.
That's pretty amazing. Like you said, like a detox from all that technology that we're surrounded by. Now, for future students that would be interested in a trip like this, what's some tips you would give them?
Okay, so I would say pack light. That is definitely something, if you are for sure, going. If you're kind of sitting there going, should I go, should I not go? One thing for me that my advisor told me that made me go, okay, yes, I am going to go to Belize, because I already went to Italy. So I was like, well, I've already done one. Why, should I do another one because of, like, finances? But then she was like, one, you are young, you're still in school. And then she was like, and think also about the cost. And then all of a sudden I was like, you know what, like, going with the MSSU, they already have kind of, like, done all the groundwork. And, they have where we're going to be staying. The meals are included. I'm going to be with the faculty, so it's not like I'm by myself. I'm going to be with other students as well. So once, she kind of said that, she was like, if you can do it, just go ahead and do it. And so, and even for other people who have asked me, that is what I tell them. I'm like, if you, do kind of have the finances, then I would definitely do it, because it is a great experience. But then if you are actually going, like I said, make sure that you pack light. You don't need to bring a whole bunch of stuff, kind of back to that simplicity thing where it's like, I don't really need this. So it's more of, okay, just some of the basic necessities. That just makes it a bit more enjoyable. And then, like, taking pictures, that was also something. It's like, yeah, you want some of these memories, but then also try and make sure you just keep them in here, so that way you're not always on your phones and you're going, I need the best picture, because sometimes your phone, it just won't capture it. So just make sure that you really take time to capture it in here.
That's great advice. Now, you said financially it's a lot more affordable through the university. So students not only have this affordable option, but they have scholarship available as well to these study abroads.
So students who travel internationally, you can apply for a grant for one, basically it's good for one time, and it'd be for $1,000. So that basically takes away from, or takes off of whatever the total cost of the trip would be for the students. So I think we had estimated on this one that it was going to be around $2,500 or so. So you figure once you knock off $1,000 from the grant, you're paying out of pocket about $1,500.
And like you said, that's your room and board, that's your tour guides, that's your education. You actually get a credit for your study abroad opportunities, and you get to interact with people from different cultures. So it's a very good experience. Now, I'd like to ask you about some more of these pictures. What are we seeing here?
So this one is actually the very first sunset that we saw while we were at Southwater Key. So that's the coral reef. So we had just, gotten in, set everything up, and then we all went down to the dock, and we were kind of swimming off of there, and then we were able to capture this beautiful view from the dock.
So this is a group photo from the morning that we were leaving, and unfortunately you can't see in the sand that says MSSU 2019, but because we spent I don't know how much time clearing debris, scratching in the sand and everything, and then we're like, oh, this looks great. We got the group set up, and well, the sun, by that point the sun had moved, and then so now there's nothing but shadows.
All right, and we were able to get in some pretty awesome volleyball games as well, and some of the locals, it was really funny because they were the ones who were like, oh yeah, come on, let's play. So we were able to play with them, and that was a lot of fun.
So it's a lot of work, lectures, homework, preparing, and some fun.
Yes, good balance of it all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so where are you at here?
So this is basically it's kind of a string of islands, you know, they're all called keys, and so this is Carrie Bow Key, and this is where the Smithsonian has a research station. It's a very small little island, but they kind of have like a rotating staff of volunteers that manage for about 3 weeks to a month at a time, and so anybody doing research, they can kind of just come through and they can process samples or whatever, stay there on the island.
Oh, that is very neat. Now, so would you do this trip again?
I think I would, yes. Because
I'm about ready to go.
Have we convinced you yet? No, it was just so much fun, and for me, as I had said before, just whenever I go on a study abroad trip, it's like I learn more than just what the professors teach, and I think that is an important element to like study abroad. And even like one of the other things I had kind of learned about this, because I have a type A personality, so I'm so used to like, you know, having a schedule and like having everything, you know, going according to that schedule. But it was like when you're there, your phone doesn't work, and sometimes stuff happens. The weather might, you know, interfere with the schedule, so it's like learning kind of how to adapt to that. That was something that for me was like super helpful, and I would definitely recommend like anybody just at least once, like going to a different country. You just get to see a different part of the world, and you get it, especially if you're with other people, you get different perspectives mixed in there.
That's amazing. Well, Dr. Willand and Danielle, thank you for joining me today and letting us know about some of the experiences you had in Belize and all the trips you've made through Missouri Southern State University. And I would like to invite anybody that's interested in studying abroad to please go to mssu.edu for more information. And thank you for joining us today.